PC history is something that I have always been interested in because I love history and technology. I'm sure anyone who watched my GPU history video would know. And yeah, what I think has the most intriguing history is the GPUs. So today let me tell you about the most legendary GPUs in PC history and the impact they had in their time and of all time. In the mid-90s, 3DFX was a new semiconductor company that had made its start in the arcade market. Over time, they decided it would be a great idea to expand into the PC consumer market as well, seeing as 3D technologies had started to take shape. They decided to take advantage. 3DFX then released the first Voodoo in late 1996, which was capable of 3D acceleration, which not many other cards had at the time. The Voodoo, however, was not the first card to support 3D. There were a few before it, but it was the first to support 3D rendering on an actual API built to render true 3D geometry, which made the image much prettier than any other cards using software rendering. 3DFX named the API Glide, and it became a staple for 3DFX until their demise. The Voodoo quickly became the most popular video card on the market because of the previously stated, but it was also much faster than any other card that supported 3D, and it was a reasonable price for a 3D card at the time. The Voodoo was not without its limits though. The Voodoo didn't support 2D rendering, so it needed a separate video card to do the rendering, which was possible through a loopback cable that linked to the Voodoo and the 2D card together. To summarize, the 3DFX Voodoo was a great video card and had become the most popular and most used 3D video card, which also made 3DFX the leader of 3D graphics in the PC consumer market until 1999, and the Voodoo remained the most popular card until 1998. In 1999, the 3D graphics competition was fierce with many different companies such as 3DFX, ATI, Matrox, S3 Graphics, PowerVR, 3D Labs, and Nvidia all competing to try and be the best, and near the end of the year, Nvidia would undoubtedly be the victor. In October of 1999, Nvidia released the first GeForce video card. With it came new technologies, such as transform in lighting, a technology that transformed lighting from 3D view to 2D one, which helped the speed of rendering light. T&L contributed to it being called the first graphical processing unit, or GPU, since it wasn't really a card that only rendered 3D, it did more than that. The GeForce was a highly anticipated product, since the public had heard rumors about it for months, being a beastly GPU with new features not seen before, and when it released, it was just as everyone thought. The reviews of the card were great, as the speed of it was upwards of 2 times faster than the competition. It also supported 32-bit color rendering, and while it wasn't a very new feature, as most other cards on the market of 1999 also supported it, it was the first card that was fast enough to actually take advantage of the color depth while at over 60 frames at resolutions like 1024 by 768, like the 1440p of the time in certain games. ATI tried to counter with the Rage Fury Max, the first ever multi-chip card, but the problem is that games needed to optimize the card in order for it to take advantage of the double chip solution, because without it, it was just a Rage 128 Pro. Nvidia was on a roll, and it only got better at the turn of the millennium, as they released the same card again but with DDR memory, which was literally twice the speed of the previous SDR memory. This made it about 50% faster on average, and once again, upwards of 2 times the speed of the SDR version. Nvidia could not be touched until 2002, when the next card on the list released. By 2001, ATI had become quite the competitor of Nvidia, and by 2002, ATI and Nvidia were the only companies that still produced consumer GPUs. It was also the year that ATI had finally released a product that surpassed Nvidia, and that would be the Radeon 9700 Pro. The 9700 Pro was a release that Nvidia was not ready for, as it proved to be the king, as it was around 50 to 70% faster than Nvidia's fastest. This would be because of its buttload of transistors. Because of this, ATI gained a lot of momentum, and they had a great release after great release for years. Radeon 9700 Pro was so good that when Nvidia released a card to try and counter it a few months later in 2003, it was a disaster. Nvidia's FX 5800 Ultra was an attempt to try to regain the crown in the GPU market, but it was an utter failure because of many reasons. The GPU had a terrible cooler design first of all, as the temperature outtake was right next to the intake. That led to the card recycling the same hot air from the card back in, leading to it being very hot. The GPU was also incredibly noisy, almost like a jet engine. It also had a worse image quality than that of the competition, and all of that, it was still slower than the Radeon 9700 Pro. ATI also released the 9800 Pro and XT cards a year later as just slightly upgraded 9700 Pros, and it worked because Nvidia couldn't do anything about it. After the release of the 9700 Pro, Nvidia could not recover until 2004, 2 years later, and they would not become the leader again until 2006, 4 years later. Fast forward to the year 2006, where Nvidia would release their own 9700 Pro on ATI's head, introducing the 8800 GTX. Just like the 9700 Pro, it has a lot of transistors and high memory along with a high bus width. This is what made the dominant speed of the 8800 GTX. But the speed and memory were not the only things the 8800 GTX was known for, but also were the new technology called shading units, or cores, and Nvidia would come to call them CUDA cores, which would be seen in many other of the GPUs up until the GTX 10 series. The shading units basically helped with the processing speed. ATI had released their fastest card, the X1950 XTX, just weeks prior, but it was foreshadowed by the 8800 GTX, which after testing showed that it was over 2 times faster in certain benchmarks, and with a $150 bigger price tag, many people thought it was a great value. The 8800 GTX's release was so legendary because it contends for the biggest GPU generational performance jump in history. In 2009, Nvidia seemed to be on top of their game, and AMD, formerly ATI, didn't release any cards worthy to compete with Nvidia since the X1900 cards in 2006, not until the HD 5000 series cards, that is. The HD 5970 was a double-chip card that AMD had used to try and compete against Nvidia after the dominant 8 series cards, and compete they did. This entry really could be the entirety of the HD 5000 series cards, since it was so much faster than the Nvidia generation at the time. The 5870 was about 30 to 40% faster than Nvidia's fastest single chips 285, and the 5970 was upwards of 2 times faster than Nvidia's fastest double chip, the 295. The 5970 even supported crossfire, essentially creating 4 times crossfire and potentially being 4 times faster than the competition. The 5970 also had a lot of VRAM for the time, with 2 GB of VRAM, which was a standard in cards until 2018. But the 5970 was quite expensive. It launched at $700 MSRP compared to the GTX 295, which was $500 MSRP. The 5000 series cards were so good that they competed with Nvidia's next generation, since the next generation flagship, the GTX 480, traded blows with the 5870, a previous generation card, and I'm assuming the 5970 was still faster than the 490, but I don't know because I couldn't find any reviews on it. Sadly, this was the last time AMD was truly on top, and after 2012, AMD would not release any noteworthy cards until 2020. But before we get to the last one, here are some honorable mentions. For the final and most recent entry on this list, The Nvidia GeForce 10 series of cards was released in 2016 as the upgrade over the 9 series cards, and with them came a big uplift in performance, as the default 1070 was the equivalent of the previous generation's best 980 Ti. Initially, the flagship in 2016 was the 1080, but when 2017 came around, Nvidia decided to release what many people believe to be the best GPU to be ever released. Enter the GTX 1080 Ti, the Ti variant of Nvidia's flagship. It blew the 1080 and any other cards out of the water because the 1080 Ti was nothing like any other Ti cards before, as it featured a huge performance lift over the 1080 and 3 more gigs of VRAM, all for just $100 more than the 1080. The 1080 Ti was considered one of the first cards to really be able to play games at 4K resolution because of its high amount of VRAM and overall speed. It was also considered to be the first GPU to support the futuristic lighting technology that is now known as ray tracing, or as Nvidia named it, RTX. Even after the next generation of Nvidia cards came out, the 1080 Ti was so fast that it traded blows with the 2080, with the only 20 card that came out that was definitely faster was the 2080 Ti for $300 more than the 1080 Ti. Because of that, and the fact that ray tracing wasn't really a widely used technology at the time of the 20 series release, it didn't make sense to get any of them over the 1080 Ti. Only after about a year, driver updates and the wider variety of games using ray tracing did the 20 series cards start to make sense to get. Over time, the 1080 Ti ended up being only around the speed of the 2070 Super, perhaps even slightly slower. But after 8 years, in the year of 2025, the 1080 Ti is still a great card to get at 1080p, and the 1080 Ti will go down as one of, if not the greatest GPU to ever exist, and it will be in the hearts of all gamers who used it till the end of time. So that's the end of my list for the most legendary GPUs of all time. Did you agree with the list? Was there any I should have put on here? Was there any I shouldn't have? Anyway, thank you all so much for watching my video. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you next time.